presence here today. We are gathered here today because, like so many Americans, we are outraged by what we are witnessing in the streets of Los Angeles and in communities across our nation. President Trump's unlawful decision to deploy the National Guard onto the streets of Los Angeles is a reckless and inflammatory escalation, one designed not to restore calm, but to provoke chaos. Let's be clear about how this began. With peaceful protests sparked by the unlawful and inhumane targeting, detention, and deportation of our immigrant neighbors. And David Huerta, a California union president arrested and injured during an immigration and customs enforcement raid last week perpetrated by the Trump administration. The Los Angeles Police Department had largely stabilized the situation, but instead of de-escalating, President Trump seized control of the National Guard forces in defiance of constitutional norms and poured gasoline on an already volatile moment. Now, under the false guise of restoring order to a crisis of his own making, the president has deployed hundreds of active duty Marines to engage in domestic law enforcement, something they do not have the legal authority to do. Don't fall for the lie. This is not about protecting public safety. It's about stoking fear and silencing peaceful dissent. It's about turning us one against one another. This is a direct attack on civil rights, due process, and our democratic norms, targeting Black and communities of color. Perhaps the most sobering truth is this. For Donald Trump, Los Angeles is only the beginning. If this president is willing to send military troops into an American city over peaceful dissent, we must ask, what happens next? What American community will be next? In a matter of weeks, maybe days, another contrived crisis could bring the armed forces to more of our communities. This presence won't be to defend our freedoms, but to instill fear. That has always been his goal, to make every Black, Latino, Asian, and immigrant community, or any American who would dare to speak out against him, afraid. From threatening to arrest a sitting governor to hinting at martial force against civilians, Trump is not acting like a leader. He is posturing as a strong man, desperate, dangerous, and utterly detached from the principles of democracy. This president has crossed the line, and we must all understand what that means. We still don't know the full consequences of this unprecedented authoritarian overreach. But let me be clear. Congressional Democrats stand in full solidarity with the residents of Los Angeles, with our immigrant sisters and brothers, and with the peaceful protesters who dare to speak out and who will support every effort to oppose this president's abuse of power. And I want to thank Governor Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass for their resolve and leadership. To those who choose to peacefully protest, stay strong, and remain peaceful. Rise above his chaos. The right to protest, to speak out against injustice, is fundamental to our democracy. It is protected by our Constitution. It is part of the American story. Trump wants violence, not to stop it, but to justify his own. Do not give him what he wants. Having said that, it's my honor now to turn the podium over to the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, Congressman Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you, Chair Clarke, Chair Meng. Together we make up the Tri-Caucus, a strong voice in the House of Representatives, that represents many districts that are being impacted by this aggressive action from the White House. So let's turn back and figure out how we got here. President Trump says that he's going to arrest violent criminals and deport them. The fact is, he's going after working people. He's going after moms. He's going after folks that are trying to make ends meet. He's going into a Home Depot to arrest day laborers. He's stopping families on their way to a Houston hospital where 4 children, U.S.-born children, were deported to Mexico with their parents, including a 10-year-old little girl with a cancerous brain tumor that now has no access to the health care that she needs to save her life. That's who he's going after. And he's doing this in an aggressive way. And so that's what got us to this moment where hundreds of people showed up to an ICE facility to protest because they've heard, they got accounts that over 200 people, just like the ones that I described, were being held there. 4 of our members went there and were not allowed in. In fact, chemicals were spilled on the floor. We're asking for a full investigation of that action. And some of them suffering from asthma were impacted by that. I myself was at 26 Federal Plaza on Sunday as people were called in for court dates on a Sunday. Were dismissed, their cases were dismissed, only to find out that ICE was waiting for them outside in the hallways where they were cuffed, kept in the building, processed for hours upon hours, to be sent to a detention center where they await deportation. People that are trying to comply with the law, with the parameters that have been set for them, the regulations that have been told for them to follow, are being trapped in the courtrooms, in ICE offices, as they try to comply with the rules and regulation. That is the state of America today. And that's why people took to the street to protest. And that's why members of Congress went to these ICE facilities to comply with our duties of oversight granted to us by the U.S. Constitution. And we were summarily denied entry. We will be going back. And we will continue to go back until we have access to those facilities and we determine exactly what's going on there, because people are coming in and they're not coming out. So that is what's happening right now in America. He has militarized Los Angeles. He has deputized local law enforcement with federal powers, dividing people as opposed to bringing the country together. The Tri-Caucus will stand united. We will stand united. We will comply with our constitutional duties of oversight, and we will continue to visit these ICE facilities until we get to the bottom of this. Thank you, and I yield to Congresswoman Grace Meng.
Hi, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or CAPAC. I'm proud to join my Tri-Caucus colleagues here today, chairs Yvette Clarke and Adriano Espaillat, to stand up for immigrants and stand against this Trump administration's attacks on our neighbors, our loved ones, and our friends. Like millions of Americans across the country, I'm deeply concerned by the administration's use of aggressive tactics against our immigrant communities. Armed agents have raided schools, workplaces, and homes, terrorizing our neighbors and literally ripping families apart. These stories are heartbreaking. You've heard some of them. A 4-year-old citizen, U.S. citizen, who was receiving treatment for stage 4 cancer was deported after showing up for a routine check-in. And child's birthday party in Texas was raided by federal authorities with flashbang grenades. As a mom, I can't even imagine how traumatizing that must have been for these kids. these are not the criminals the administration claims they are. They are our neighbors, our friends, and loved ones who work hard, pay their taxes, and contribute to our country. The Department of Homeland Security should use its limited resources to address serious national security threats and fix our broken immigration system. Instead, President Trump continues to escalate tensions and even deployed 2,000 plus National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles, despite the sitting California governor's objections. This is not about public safety. This is about exerting control and striking more fear in our immigrant communities. Threatening to send troops into neighborhoods, especially against the state governor's wishes, is an abuse of power that will undermine the National Guard's mission, erode trust, and put more people in harm's way. This military action is coming from the same president who refused to deploy the National Guard on January 6th, when there was more violent protests already happening right here. My colleagues and I were trapped in the Capitol while brave law enforcement officers here put their lives on the line to protect us from violent insurrectionists. And I remember getting the message very soon that no, the president will not be sending the National Guard. Let me be clear, Americans have a constitutional right to protest peacefully and to demand justice and due process for their neighbors, especially when the federal government fails to uphold these principles. As members of Congress, we have been exercising our legal authority to conduct oversight of detention centers and demand accountability from the administration. We stand in solidarity with the immigrants who make America great, and our country is made stronger because of them. And we will continue to fight for immigration policies that reflect our nation's values of fairness and dignity for all, not cruelty disguised as law and order. Thank you, and I yield back to Chair Clarke.
Let me thank all of my colleagues assembled here. This is a representation of our Democratic caucus to a large extent, because indeed, we are a reflection of the constituencies that sent us here to represent them. Having said that, we're open now for any questions you may have. Yes, could you state your name and your publication or outlet?
Yes, my name is Annie Shea, and I'm with the Daily Caller News Foundation. We've heard some Democrats say today that they condemn any violence that broke out in LA over the weekend. However, Congresswoman Maxine Waters has said that there's been no violence. She didn't see any violence. There wasn't anything happening in LA. And there's just a bit of a difference in messaging there from what we're hearing from a lot of other Democrats. Is that concerning at all, that difference in messaging or anything of that nature?
I think everyone is entitled to their opinion. She's their